everybody, and welcome to The Garage. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Peter Clayton is behind the camera. Pete?
Yes. Yes, I'll take the blame for that.
Oh, well, it's not the blame. I mean, I looked at the posting this yesterday morning, and what did you call the Prime Minister? A buffoon?
I called him a clown, a buffoon, and a disgrace. And I stand by it.
Why don't you tell us what you really think?
Oh, I was expecting that, yes.
I don't think in this wonderful free country we can get into too much trouble, but I don't know. You never know with Prime Ministers. Speaking of Prime Ministers, no, I won't mention his name. He mightn't want me to. But I got this morning.
Oh, okay.
You got this? It says, Paul Keating said this years ago before this referendum was even thought of. So he, Paul Keating, and this must mean he supports the no vote. Because I don't know if you can, well, you can't creep in and look at it, but I'll read it to you. I won't add to it or anything. I won't gild the lily. If you... Hey, Pete, the fly's back.
Well,
did you hear that?
Not
Isn't it amazing? We come in here, I sit down.
Yes. Well, I'd have a can of Mortine, but you won't.
No. I don't believe in killing anything. It says here, the words of Paul Keating, if you don't understand it, don't vote for it. If you do understand it, you would never vote for it. Paul Keating. There you go. We have an official endorsement from the Labour Party. It's a bit of fun, ladies and gentlemen. Far from fun is what's going on, of course, on the other side of the world, which is terribly worrying and sad because it is probably going to spread. Hundreds killed, hostages taken, terrible stories of rape and brutality, no logic, just blind hatred of the Jewish state. These people, they must be the new Islamic State. They make all the same noises. Now, I don't know what we do about this whole thing. Palestinians in Australia celebrated this terrible invasion. They celebrated it, believe it or not. Death and destruction. It's a bit late, I suppose, but we have to keep anti-Semitism out of Australia. I don't know why Islam seems to hate Christians and Jews. Maybe it goes back to the Crusades, I don't know. But even some of the Islamic groups, and there are many different tribes, some of which are not familiar, the names are not familiar, but some of the tribes don't even get on with some of the tribes. It's a very fractured kind of, very sprawling family. I fear we're in for a long and difficult war. But it is, of course, Iran. Hezbollah and Hamas will front the aggression. Yep, sure. I think we'll come to know them more as Islamic State. But it's Iran in back of it all. It really is. Here in Australia, we're confronted with demonstrations in Sydney and Melbourne. Can I read you this? This is from the Guardian, if it comes to hand reasonably quickly. Yeah. Pro-Palestinian protesters were allowed to chant, "Gas the Jews, gas the Jews." And they burnt the Star of David flag in front of the Sydney Opera House on Monday night, which had been lit up in the colours of the Israeli flag. a counter-demonstration that is in favour of the Jewish state. Counter-demonstrators were arrested for attempting to fly the Israeli flag. What is going on in this country? I don't believe it. The despicable scenes have been roundly condemned by leaders across the political spectrum. Well, damn well should be. The Attorney General, Michael Daly, well, he must be, I don't know the name, he must be the Attorney General in New South Wales, the new one. He's the highest law officer in New South Wales, admitted to being unaware of the protest in a car crash interview with 2GB's Ben Fordham. He's good. Watch Ben Fordham, he's good. That was on Tuesday morning, before the Attorney General urgently backpedalled and called for people to calm down and stay at home. Police are now under fire for allowing the rally to go ahead, while telling Jewish Australians to stay at home for their own safety. So Jewish people are at risk on the streets of Sydney and Melbourne. This happened in Melbourne as well.
Can I just add something?
Yeah, please do.
I would deport every one of those demonstrators, personally.
Well, we've imported them.
There's no
That's
place
part of
for
the
that.
problem.
Yeah.
Many of them, of course, you can't deport. Anyway, I don't know if you saw the Middle Eastern demonstration a few days earlier in southwestern Sydney on the evening news. I think it was Monday. Muslims, definitely a religious demonstration, Islamic support for the attack on Israel. Somehow we've got to impress upon migrants that we don't want their hate and prejudice. Leave that at the door. Don't bring it in. Don't bring that or, you know, all the rest of the stuff that we keep on hearing about, honour killings and underage marriages and female genital mutilation. Just don't bring it in. You're free of it. You're in Australia. Years ago, we went through some of this when we had immigrants from Serbia and Croatia, Yugoslavia, Sarajevo, the Baltic states. People with deep-seated historical hatred. There was great tension, and indeed there were demonstrations, and I think from memory there were even deaths, killings, trouble and violence. Now, I wonder if any of those problems of ethnicity, are taken into consideration when people want to come to Australia. But it would be simple, wouldn't it, to say, okay, it's fine. Now, you may have differences with other people you'll meet on the street, but that was in the old country. This is the new country. Doesn't apply. Anyway, no trouble. This Middle Eastern problem, of course, you're going to find this at petrol stations. They're going to tell us that petrol is going to go up in price because of the Middle East disturbances. Some retailers are also, they're using it as an excuse right now, believe it or not. Bizarre. So I don't know what you can do, of course. You can't stand up to the proprietor and say, how dare you? There's no way that the troubles in the Middle East are filtering through to your petrol bowsers so soon. God. Terrible earthquake in Afghanistan. You would have seen that. You would have read about it, heard about it. I can't understand how the West, the hated, the evil West, can be expected to race to the aid of these people. I mean, I'd call them butchers. They're terrible people. The Taliban. Murderous misogynists. On behalf of all the little girls in Afghanistan, I would suggest we let those bastards stew in their own juice. They totally rely on foreign aid, which of course never gets to the people. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Well, stop that immediately. Hang the Taliban. Hang them out to dry. I'd like to hang them literally. And yes, of course, the average person is going to be affected. But if you don't stop the aid, you are simply aiding and abetting the evil doings of the Taliban. I really believe that. It's harsh. I know that. But what else can you do? You can't just simply supply the enemy. We've got a couple of things over the next 2 days to show you. Pete, the first one, which is, Marcus sent this to me, and I love the way you send me things. It's fantastic. Marcus sent me this, and we'll run this at the end of the show. I'll do a few dates and we'll run it. From memory, I think it's called A Short History of Slavery. Now, I had what I thought was a perfectly good working understanding of how slavery began and how it went and how it ended. But no, it's remarkably different. Please stay for that. I would really like you to have a look at that and tell me what you think. And tomorrow, we'll conclude our posting with another contribution from Marcus, which is about multiculturalism, which is fantastically interesting. It's not heavy. It is really very to the point about different cultures and all the nonsense we're told about. And we're not only told, we're intimidated about this culture thing, which leads to culture wars, of course. October 11, happy birthday, happy wedding anniversary. 1887 was the year. A. Miles. Don't know him? From Adam. He patents the elevator. God, think of the royalties. No one could build an elevator without him. I always thought it was Mr. Otis. Anyway, 1887. I remember seeing a building in Sydney, in Phillip Street it was, the old Pioneers Club, where they had a little birdcage lift. And they actually had a man in the lift pulling the thing up on a rope. Now that was old. It was an elevator, but way before electricity. I wonder what happened to it. It could be a wonderful thing to see and have. That elevator, I mean. 1982, the English ship Mary Rose, which sank during an engagement with France in 1545, was raised in Portsmouth, England. Back in 1982, okay. 2001, the Polaroid company files for federal bankruptcy protection. And yet, I can remember when Polaroid was one of the biggest names. One of the biggest names. Oh, here's a good one. 1995, John Bobbitt. Does that name ring a bell?
Hard to forget.
John Bobbitt had plastic surgery to... No, not put it back on, but to increase it by 3 inches. You'd have thought he would have quit while he was ahead, wouldn't you? You can't have too much of a good thing. Oh dear. I think he went on to be a porn star or something, didn't he, Pete?
I think so. Rings a bell.
Oh dear. Well, on that basis, I suppose the whole operation would have been tax deductible. All right. Be sensible. 1983, the last hand-cranked telephone in the US went out of service as 440 telephone customers in Bryant Pond, Maine, were switched over to direct dial. I got a hand-cranked telephone over there. And it works. It does. I don't worry so much about the hand cranking anymore. 1939, Albert Einstein informs FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, of the possibilities of an atomic bomb. This day in 1939. Well, I suppose FDR might have kicked himself thinking, well, he could have got onto that case a little bit earlier, because that thing came in bloody handy. 1738, Arthur Phillip, British Admiral, first Governor of New South Wales. 1788 to 1792, he was born in Cheapside, London. Died 1814, born 1738. Angela Lansbury, the Irish, British, American, Golden Globe, multi-Tony award-winning stage and screen actress. She was in Gaslight, Manchurian Candidate, Mame, Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, Murder, She Wrote. Oh, she had a wonderful... She was working almost till the time she died. And she died at 96. The year was 2022. What a wonderful, long life. Ronald Reagan and Michael Gorbachev opened talks at a summit. This was in 1986. They held a summit in Reykjavik, in Iceland. Well, I suppose it was the Cold War, wasn't it? Yeah. I got a funny feeling the old guys knew how to run the joint better, somehow. 1944, Henry John Heinz, German-American entrepreneur who founded Prepared Foods Company, H.J. Heinz. 57 varieties. He was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, died 1919, born 1844. Future US President Bill Clinton and future US Senator and Secretary of State Hillary Rodham got married. 1975, University of Sydney, Australia's oldest university, is inaugurated. 1852. That's one of the, well, it's still one of the great sandstone universities, but gee, I'd clean it out. Most of our universities are, well, you expect young people to be rebellious and, you know, I don't know, maybe Marxists and Stalinists and all that sort of thing. But I don't think it comes from the kids. I think it comes from the teachers. I think it comes from the curriculum. I don't know what they're doing, but I don't think they're doing the right thing by our children. But the kids will get the blame. 2016, South Korea. Samsung announces that it will permanently stop production of their telephone because it tended to catch fire. Maybe it had a lithium-ion battery in it. 2016, that was. Just a couple more. 1977, American inventor Gordon Gould issued his first US patent for an optically pampered laser amplifier. Whatever the hell that is. Is that like a turbo encabulator? It could be. 20 years after his first claiming to have invented the laser. 1977. Chico Marx sadly died at 74, 1961. And Dawn French, Welsh comedian and TV actress, soon to be back in Australia, by the way. Supergrass, French and Saunders, The Vicar of Dibley. She was very good in that. She was born in Wales on this day in 1957. We'll leave the dates there, and I will throw to a modern history of slavery. Thank you for viewing the Court of Public Opinion, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget our live streaming from the dining room table come Friday, 9 o'clock, jeremycordeaux.com. Believe in yourself. Pete and I'll be back tomorrow. Bye for now.
And now for a brief history of slavery. Here's the first thing you need to know. Slavery was not invented by white people. It did not start in 1619 when the first slaves came to Jamestown. It existed before then. It did not start in 1492 when Columbus discovered the New World. In fact, when the intrepid explorer landed in the Bahamas, the native Taino tribe hoped that he would help them defeat their aggressive neighbors, the Caribs. The Caribs enslaved the Taino and, on occasion, served them for dinner. Slavery existed in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The word slave actually comes from the Slavs of Eastern Europe. Millions of them, all white by the way, were captured and enslaved by Muslims in the 9th century and later by the Ottoman Turks. Slavery existed when the Roman Empire controlled the Mediterranean and most of Europe from the 1st through the 5th centuries. Slavery existed when Alexander the Great conquered Persia in the 4th century BC. It was so common that Aristotle simply considered it natural. The slave master model was just how the world operated in the great philosopher's day. Slavery existed during the time of the ancient Egyptians 5,000 years ago. As far back as we can go in human history, we find slavery. As renowned historian John Steele Gordon notes from time immemorial, slaves were a major item of commerce. As much as a third of the population of the ancient world was enslaved. Here's the second thing you need to know. White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery. In 1833, Britain was the first country in the history of the world to pass a Slavery Abolition Act. They were quickly followed by France, who in 1848 abolished slavery in her many colonies. Then, of course, came the 13th Amendment in the United States Constitution. After centuries of human slavery, white men led the world in putting an end to the abhorrent practice. That includes the 300,000 Union soldiers, overwhelmingly white, who died during the Civil War. Now, am I saying that this makes white people better than anyone else? Of course not. My purpose here is to simply tell the truth, and the truth is that human history is complicated. No one, regardless of skin color, stands guiltless. Yet today we are never told to consider the murderous Persian Empire or the cannibalism of indigenous tribes of North and South America or the heinous actions under the imperialistic Muslim, Chinese, Mongol, or Japanese empires, to name just a few. Instead, we're told that slavery is a white phenomenon. And like all persistent lies, this lie spawns a bunch of other lies. On social media, I come across extraordinary depictions about how Africans lived like pharaohs before Europeans came and laid waste to their paradise. I wish any of this were true, but it's not. It's a fantasy. The truth is that Africans were sold into slavery by other Black Africans, and in many cases, sold for items as trivial as gin and mirrors. Whites didn't go into the interior and round up the natives. They waited on the coast for their Black partners to bring them Black bodies. The stark reality is that our lives had very little value to our ancestors. Here's the third thing you need to know. If you think slavery is a relic of the past, you're wrong. There are some 700,000 slaves in Africa today, right now. That's the lowest estimate that I could find. Other sources say there are many more. For context, that's almost twice as many slaves as were ever brought to the United States. Child soldiers, human trafficking, forced labor, these are the conditions that currently exist within the same sub-Saharan region where the transatlantic slave trade originated. African bodies are being sold today like they were sold then, and no, they are not being purchased by any country of white men. In fact, slavery, by any traditional definition, is exclusively practiced today within non-white countries. But we hear almost nothing about that. Just like we hear nothing about how slavery was universal until good people in Europe and America ended it 2 centuries ago. Why? Because our so-called leaders, Black and white, wouldn't profit from it. Black victimhood is nothing if not profitable. It elects politicians and funds racial grievance groups. And if Black Americans began to view themselves as partners in the American dream, if we embraced the patriotic spirit that holds all men are created equal, the patriotic spirit that is our real heritage, then the race hustlers would soon be out of business. And who wants that? I'm Candace Owens, author of Blackout for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.